AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word SHOW to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word SHOW, S-H-O-W, to 33777. Text SHOW to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, hang on. I forgot to text a friend. I stumbled across a redacted FBI document last night. My friend Molly Hemingway had it on her Twitter feed, and it blew my mind. It completely blew my mind to see this document. Of all of the insane things that I have seen, this is an FBI document, and a lot of it is redacted. According to blank, who communicates with blank, blank is a blank of Ed Corrigan. According to blank, Ed Corrigan is pro-Putin and anti-Biden. Blank, along with blank colleague at the blank, consider what Corrigan is doing treason. Blank believes that Corrigan and his boss, Mark Meadows, are engaged in willful criminal activity. According to blank, Corrigan has blank properties at which he wants to build up infrastructure to train people for civil war. Corrigan secretly controls the Freedom Caucus and has plans that are not good for the FBI. Corrigan hates the FBI, who he refers to as spooks. Corrigan claims to have identified and blank as a spook in the blank. Additionally, blank thinks Kushner may have given classified documents to the Saudis as part of the $2 billion deal. I attached the bio I found for blank, and here's a document about him in our system. Blank thinks that blank would be willing to talk to the FBI. Sorry for the sparse nature of the info. If there's something you'd like me to have blank ask, please let me know. Cheers, blank. None of you probably know who Ed Corrigan is. Ed Corrigan is a good friend of mine. Someone apparently confused Ed Corrigan's desire for an army of parliamentarians to be an army of paramilitary people. This is genuinely one of the dumbest things I have ever read, and is one of the most discrediting things I ever read. I know Ed hates the FBI. Do you know how many years I spent going through pitchers of beer with Ed Corrigan at Union Pub in D.C.? Ed Corrigan is not pro-Putin. He is anti-Biden. And he's not a treasonous. I mean, he's got bad taste in sports teams, but he's not a traitor to the country. I beat him at fantasy football one time, but it was only because Russ Vogt picked my team for me. Ed Corrigan, international man of mystery. This is y'all okay. Have you ever read a news story and it's a random news story and you come across a statement in the news story and you're like, wait a second, I know something about that. what is it? The Michael Crichton, the guy, who was Crutchfeld? Was it Crutchfeld? That it was the guy Michael Crichton talked about who read a news story about physics and knew that every single thing in the story was BS because he's an expert on the subject. And then flipped the page and read something about the Israeli-Palestinian situation. He just took it as fact. And Crichton's point is that when you're an expert on a topic and you read something in the media and you know it's absurd, you don't go the next page over and also think, oh, that's absurd. You just take it as truth because you're an expert in this one thing. So, for example, there's a story I read the other day. It's about a lawsuit. I won't go into the details, but a radio group has filed a lawsuit against another company, and I read someone's commentary, and I was like, not only was I a lawyer, this was actually my expertise in law. And this commentator on the radio industry doesn't know what the hell he's talking about in his characterization of the lawsuit. And it's actually now because I'm aware of the Michael Crichton story about his friend Bernie, whatever. I'm like, now I got to be more skeptical every time I read this person's commentary. They clearly don't know what they're talking about. So I read this story. I read this FBI thing about Ed Corrigan, and then I see this Kalen Deese story about it's the FBI Arctic Frost investigation targeting 160 Republican operatives. Okay, first of all, the FBI memo that's got a lot of my friends outraged is a standard operating procedure where they interview someone and they're just writing the notes so that they can expound on the investigation. So it's someone clearly approached them about Ed Corrigan who has an axe to grind and apparently is a complete moron thinking that Ed Corrigan wanted a paramilitary group. He wants a parliamentary procedure group. Rachel Bovard and Ed Corrigan at the Conservative Partnership Institute teach conservatives parliamentary procedure to be able to tie the Senate in knots. That's what they do. It's part of their job. I mean, for years when I would get together with these guys and with Jim DeMint and others, one of the things they wanted that they've now breathed life into with the Conservative Partnership Institute is to train up an army of conservatives who know the rules of the House and the Senate better than the members of the House and the Senate. So you can tie those organizations in knots and get what you want. That's what he's been doing. It's not a paramilitary group to start a civil war. It's a parliamentary group to start civil procedure. These people are morons, and yet these are the people. These are the people who the FBI was talking to. These axes to grind. Axes to grind. Ed Corrigan is more interested in fantasy football than in willful criminal activity for a civil war. And our mutual friends, one of whom I know is sitting next to him right now, says that he's a terrible, terrible, awful commissioner of fantasy football. I actually got banned from fantasy football by Ed Corrigan. If anybody has an axe to grind, it's me, because Russ Vogt picked my team. Yes, the head of OMB picked my team for me. I'd never done fantasy football before, and I won. And it was invalidated by one Ed Corrigan, who threw me out of the league because I wasn't the one who picked my team. And I won. And I was disqualified from winning by Ed. So I have the axe to grind. And even I'm smart enough not to go to the FBI saying he wants some sort of civil war. So all of this is to say that this Arctic Frost investigation appears even more so than it was originally, and we've all kind of been dismissive of the idiocy of it. But I mean, I can read this unclassified document about Ed Corrigan and know these were a bunch of partisan axe grinders who probably Ed obstructed something in the Senate at some point that somebody wanted, and some lobbyist somewhere got mad and ran off to the FBI to claim the guy wanted to start a civil war as payback for Ed denying him some, I don't know, kickback, some little benefit from the federal budget. This is the craziest thing. This is from the Washington Examiner. FBI agents from field offices across the country assisted in a sweeping investigation known as Arctic Frost that targeted more than 160 Republican operatives, lawmakers, and Trump-aligned figures for possible 2020 election-related crimes, according to documents made public Tuesday that suggest the politically charged investigation was far more extensive than previously known. The House Judiciary Committee, led by Chairman Jim Jordan, disclosed new records provided by FBI Director Kash Patel, revealing the Arctic Frost investigation was broader than initially understood and appeared to reach deeper into President Trump's political network as the former president tried his 2024 comeback. The committee said the records show what Republicans describe as an aggressive effort under the former President Joe Biden's Justice Department to take down President Trump and his supporters. The documents released Tuesday show that 45 individuals closely associated with Trump were flagged for possible investigation during Arctic Frost, alongside another 111 people in Trump's broader political orbit, such as former Trump White House advisor Steve Bannon, former New York Mayor and Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani, former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, former Trump attorney John Eastman, former Trump DOJ official Jeff Clark, Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, and many others. The records indicate that many of those swept into the probe were never accused of crimes and were placed under review as the FBI mapped contacts, communications, and activities surrounding efforts to challenge the 2020 election. The inquiry began under FBI Director Chris Wray and was subsequently taken over by then Special Counsel Jack Smith after former Attorney General Merrick Garland elevated the matter and assigned it to Smith's office. This really was an operation to try to shut down Trump's reelection campaign in 2024. When you're targeting a guy like Corrigan because you've confused parliamentary activity with paramilitary activity, that's one of the stupidest things I think. I have heard a lot of stupid things in my time. Y'all, I have children and I was a lawyer. I have heard really stupid things in my life. This is probably at the peak of the stupidity of things I have ever heard. Just absolutely absurd. And you know, and again, it's wild to go into reading this story and think, wait a second, Corrigan? No way. Just absolutely hilarious. Now, here's what actually was going on. And by the way, we know they were tapping Republican senators. And the Democrats, by the way, they're defensive of this. They're saying, well, if there really was a seditious plot to overthrow the government by Trump, of course they were going to tap the phones of senators. There was never a seditious plot to overthrow the government of the United States. I am one of the people who thinks the 2020 election wasn't stolen. Well, it was stolen fair and square in court by a bunch of lawyers. I am one of those people who thinks that January 6th was very, very bad. Very bad. I am the person who said on January 6th, as it was happening, as they were trying to smash the doors down to get to members of Congress who were fleeing in the background, that the police should open fire and stop the people from trying to storm in, because they really did at the time. Let's not be revisionist. They were trying to grab members of Congress who, on the security footage, you literally could see running in the background down a secure corridor to get out of the way. But the idea that there has been some seditious plot to overthrow the government of the United States by a bunch of fantasy football nerds who are more interested in parliamentary procedure than anything else is one of the dumbest things I've heard. And this is what happens when you believe the worst in the other side. And it's a danger for the right as much as we see it as a danger for the left when you are absolutely convinced that everyone on the other side is a monster. And there are a lot of monsters out there. We've seen the people cheering on the deaths of Charlie Kirk and others. We saw the Democrats cheering on the thought of assassinating Donald Trump. There are monsters out there. But when you view everyone in the party as a force of the demonic, which is what the Democrats did to the Republicans, you get this Arctic Frost investigation where they're trying to tie people together into some sort of grand conspiracy to overthrow the government by willfully misinterpreting what the people are doing. I've known Ed Corrigan since 2004. I can tell you Ed Corrigan's seditious, traitorous plot. I know it because I sat in the room around the table with the people who talked about it. I'll give you what the plot is. It's to teach conservatives how to tie the House and the Senate in knots by using the rules of the House and Senate and by disrespecting process in favor of the proper terminology and the rules. And by that I mean in the United States Senate, the leader of the Senate majority tends to get deference, but the rules of the Senate don't say he gets deference. It's just by habit. And so you as a senator can actually command the attention of the Senate over the Senate majority leader and the Senate minority leader because you're all under the rules of the Senate treated equally. And you can do that under the rules of the Senate, and the rules of the Senate let you. It's just not done by design. And so one of the things Corrigan wanted to teach conservative members of the Senate was that you don't have to play deference. You can actually use the rules to your advantage because so many of the rules in the Senate are structured with deference towards leadership, not in writing, but just by habit. And you can break the habits and control the Senate. That's the wild, treasonous conspiracy of Ed Corrigan. Use the rules as the rules are written, not as the rules have been implemented. This isn't hard stuff. It's also not treasonous. It's nerd stuff. It's nerd stuff. But the Democrats concocted a conspiracy in their heads that Donald Trump was going to overthrow the government, and he never did, and so they morphed it into we must stop him from getting reelected. And the irony, the staggering irony, is that the Democrats, by implementing a plan to stop Donald Trump from ever getting elected again, actually caused him to get reelected. Hello, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. The AARP is lobbying for an extension of the government health care subsidies. My buddy Phil Kerpen did a report he's the president of American Commitment, and did a report as AARP is actively lobbying to extend the Obamacare subsidies that United Healthcare is pushing them, and they got paid an exceedingly large amount of money by United Healthcare. AARP actually makes billions of dollars from United Healthcare by taking a percentage of every Medigap premium. They lobby Congress to extend the subsidies for Obamacare that then benefit United Healthcare. Seniors are actually paying more, and AARP is making billions on a system that's bankrupting the government, and they want to keep the gravy train rolling. Remember, AARP is not your friend. It's actually helping bankrupt the government and make health care worse for the seniors it claims to represent. Now, let me tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them, and you can save $200, get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. Use the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm, it's an air purifier. So it gets rid of pollen, it gets rid of dust, it gets rid of pet dander. It kills 99.9% of bacteria and viruses. Where it really stands out, though, is odor elimination. In fact, I don't let it run all the time because it generates ozone, but the ozone is actually magic when it comes to eliminating odors. So ozone is a gas. It's O3. It's an oxygen molecule with an extra atom of oxygen. And the ozone is, it's an unstable molecule. It wants to discharge that oxygen, and it does it when it meets an ionized particle called an odor. And they wipe each other out, and it's magic. It can go where the odors originate, and it takes care of all of them. You can get 3 of them. You save $200. You get them for less than $200. Gets rid of bacteria, viruses, ozone, or odors. You go to EdenPureDeals.com. Use discount code ERIC3. EdenPureDeals.com. Discount code ERIC3. Hello there. It's Eric Erickson. I want to talk to you about a sensitive subject. Seriously, I'm actually not being flippant here. This is in the. Is it in the show notes? Maybe. Yeah, I think it is. If you text Eric to 33777. Yale University used a commercial satellite. You know, you can rent out satellites now, and you can fly them over areas of the world and get them to take high-resolution pictures. Yale University did that in northern Darfur in Sudan. There's been a massacre. You can see it for yourself. It's not AI. I'm not making it up. If you subscribe to the show notes, you got the link. You can see the blood from space. I'm looking at an image from a satellite of El Fasher, north of Darfur. Shows the presence, this is the description from the Yale School of Public Health. Imagery collected over the Daraja Ola neighborhood in El Fasher on the 27th of October, 2025, so 2 days ago. Shows the presence of clusters of objects, ground discoloration, and light technical vehicles. The objects within the clusters measure between 1.5 meters to 2 meters in length. The group of light technical vehicles appear to be blocking the road near where what appears to be red discoloration on the ground. One cluster of objects is flanked by 3 light technical vehicles. I know what I'm looking at. Y'all, I'm looking at satellite images of piles of bodies on the ground. These are piles of bodies pinned in by vehicles. And if you didn't know they were piles of bodies, all you need to do is look at the red lakes. Those are pools of blood on the ground. This is happening 2 days ago. Now, I want to raise this issue because, George Clooney did an advertisement for Nespresso in Japan. And he was an actor of his prominence doing a Nespresso coffee machine ad in Japan. And people asked him why. You know what his answer was? It gave him the money to buy a satellite to park over Sudan to survey the massacres that were happening so that he could raise international awareness. Now, I vehemently disagree with his politics as much as he disagrees with mine, but he was one of the first prominent Americans to get people to pay attention to the massacres happening in Darfur. And here we now have a satellite image, a high-resolution satellite image from Yale School of Public Health, and you can see the bodies on the ground in the pool of blood from 2 days ago, where the blood is soaking into the desert sand. In Nigeria, Christians are being slaughtered. 100,000 plus Christians are being slaughtered by Islamic radicals who are taking over that country. You see, in Nigeria, was a mostly Christian country, and the Muslim invaders came in out of the desert. They were radicalized by ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and instead of trying to have democracy, they just started murdering the Christians. And their rationale has been that if they eliminate the Christians, the Muslims will be a majority and they'll be able to win elections that way. And the Muslim politicians turned a blind eye to what was going on. And hundreds of thousands of people are being murdered in Nigeria because of their faith. And you have Qatar, which pays a lot of pundits in the United States, and Al Jazeera is, you will note, not covering this. In fact, Al Jazeera is running stories that it's not really happening, but we have the graphic images, we have the evidence, we have the testimony, we have lots of eyewitnesses, including a Catholic priest who was gunned down One country over in Niger, they want you to say. An American missionary was abducted by suspected jihadists and is still missing. This is from 2 days ago. Kevin Rideout was taken from his home in Niger's capital in the middle of the night last week in a Toyota Corolla by 3 armed suspected jihadists. Rideout's a pilot for the Evangelical Missionary Agency serving in mission. He was taken hostage from the capital city less than 100 yards from the presidential palace. His cell phone last placed him in an area to be considered a sanctuary for groups affiliated with ISIS. That was 6 days ago. I need to make a political point, and this is going to turn some of you off, and it's a partisan point. And I don't mean it to be a partisan point. I swear to you, it is the truth. And I need you to know it's the truth. And I'm not, it sounds like a partisan point, and it's not a partisan point. It's a very real point. But if you're a Democrat, you're not going to like it. And I don't mean to offend you. I don't mean for you to flip that little switch where you tune out everything I say, because it actually is a real point. When Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, in order to divert the American military attention, one of the strategies that Vladimir Putin employed was to stir up trouble in the Sahel region of Africa. That is the Sahara region of Africa, the nations that abut the Sahara. Because the United States has invested a lot of time over a lot of years building up military alliances with countries in Africa to be able to push out the Islamic radicals, Al-Qaeda and ISIS. One of the ways that ISIS and Al-Qaeda fund their terrorism is they poach animals like elephants and rhinoceroses, and they sell the ivory on the black market in southern Africa, and then they fund the operations in the Sahel. Or in the Sahel, they go in and they take over mines, and they steal diamonds and gold and precious metals, and they sell them on the black market. They go into archaeological sites, and they wipe out precious materials, and they sell them on the black market to collectors, and they fund their ability to wage war. And what the United States had done is we built up alliances with Niger and with Nigeria and with Burkina Faso and a number of countries that swept across the Sahel, this area of northern Africa and West Africa that stretches across with the Sahara. And so Vladimir Putin used the mercenary group. Now, what do you call them? Now I forget the name. You know, the mercenary group from the Russia that tried to launch the coup, and he killed their leader, and he exiled them to West Africa, the leaders of this group, and has had them doing a number of coups in these West African countries. And in the process of overthrowing governments that were friendly to the United States, they helped install governments, the Wagner Group, thank you. The Wagner Group helped install governments that would cave to the Islamic radicals. I'm not making any of this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. I know this. I've covered this. You know this. You've heard these stories. The Wagner Group had a systemic series of coups through West Africa to destabilize pro-Western governments. So once they were gone, ISIS would be welcomed in. Why? Because Vladimir Putin reasoned that if the United States was tied up undoing the Wagner Group's damage in West Africa and the Sahel, they would be distracted and not be fully engaged in Ukraine. Well, what Vladimir Putin apparently took him too long to realize is that Joe Biden had dementia, so he was going to be distracted from everything anyway. And progressives in the Biden administration, and again, this is true. It's not partisan. It's just truth. The progressives within the Biden administration have so long descended into woke, progressive, critical race theory consciousness that when people started complaining about the extermination of Christians in Western Africa, their original thinking was that, well, it's the colonizers who are being punished by the colonized. And this is not a clash of religions. It's a clash of cultures, and the predominant local culture is taking over, except what they miss is that these parts of Africa were actually Christianized, and it was the Islamic radicals who were the colonizers. Just as northern Africa was actually Christian until Muhammad invaded and killed all the Christians, Augustine was a black man from northern Africa. And the critical race theory poison mind of the progressive academics at the Biden State Department missed all of this, and they've let West Africa go to hell in a handbasket. And now going all the way over to Sudan, where they haven't wanted to involve themselves because by claiming it was a religious conflict, they could interpret it as colonizer colonized. And, those Christians are all a bunch of colonizers. Never mind that Christianity in Ethiopia is about the earliest founding area of Christianity in the Bible, when you had Philip headed back to Ethiopia, or Philip encountering the guy headed back to Ethiopia and converted him, took Christianity back to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is literally one of the original places on planet Earth where Christianity first spread, well before Islam, and yet the progressives interpret Christianity as a religion of the colonizer and Islam as a religion of the colonized, and so they've completely upended this part of the world, and now you've got a Holocaust happening all over Africa. You've got genocide happening, and all of these people are focused on a genocide in Gaza that wasn't actually happening, and they've ignored the murders, the mass murders of people in Africa. And why does this affect you and me? Because there are these isolationists on the right now who say we should just leave it all alone, except you can't. You can't leave it alone, because what's happening is ISIS is setting up hotbeds of activity to train terrorists to make it about you. They will come here eventually. That is why the Bush administration and the Obama administration and the Trump administration all agreed. Think about this. The Obama administration agreed with the Trump administration, agreed with the Bush administration that you had to contain the Islamic radicals in Africa. It was an agreement across ideologies until the Biden administration came in and the progressives put in place, the Elizabeth Warren supporters and the Bernie Sanders supporters who were isolated from the from the Obama team, came in and decided, no, Christians are colonizers. Muslims are colonized, and now the colonized are having their way with the colonizers. Leave it all alone. Let's get out of there. And the whole place went belly up. And now you have a massive influx of Islamic radicals committing genocide. And we have satellite photos from Darfur from 2 days ago. You can see the bodies on the ground. You can see the pools of blood from outer space. That's how many people were killed in Darfur. In Niger, an American citizen has gone missing at the hands of Islamic radicals. In Nigeria, over 100,000 Christians have been murdered. And do you hear it on CNN? Of course not. MSNBC? No. What do you hear about? You hear about the slaughter of the people of Gaza that never actually happened, that was a figment of the imagination of people who support terrorists. People are being murdered. But it goes beyond that, and this is where it affects you and me. ISIS and Al-Qaeda are creeping back out of the shadows and rebuilding. Do not think they will not come for you and me. They want to come for you and me. And if we don't deal with them there, we will deal with them here. And even the Trump administration and the Obama administration and the Bush administration understood that you must contain them there. And when Biden got in office, the progressives in his administration, their arrogance, they allowed them to be outgunned and outmaneuvered by the Wagner Group and the Russians, who destabilized West African governments and emboldened the Islamic radicals. And we're going to have to deal with them because they want your children dead, and they're laying the groundwork for Islamic states in Africa that will then turn to you and me and our children if we don't recontain them. This is a failure of the Biden administration. No one has ever wanted to hold his team accountable for that. These hundreds of thousands of people are being murdered over there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, you can also text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 and get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, all those many things. We have had, just so you know, and it's not just us, some technical difficulties with call screeners. I think call screeners open now, but there's an Azure, Amazon Web Services were down, and now the Azure system from Microsoft is down. I actually just got an email from my golf club. I can tell you they're saying the TrackMan system. They're having all sorts of difficulties with the TrackMan systems globally because of this Microsoft database system. Our live streaming partner is having problems, and it's affecting all sorts of stuff. It was Amazon the other day, which actually you could also tell how many people use Amazon because way more people were affected by the Amazon outage than are being affected by the Microsoft outage, and yet the Microsoft outage is causing all sorts of problems for my beloved TrackMan simulators, which I don't have the money for a TrackMan simulator. They're like $25,000. I would love one, but I got to win the lottery first or sell a kidney to be able to get one, which I'm not going to do. They're impressive. So I took a lesson. I joined this golf club in Atlanta, In Town Golf, and they use TrackMan simulators. It's not real golf course. It's simulators. And they've got a great golf pro. He's from Great Britain and was in there, and he explained all the numbers to me. And I thought I did far worse. I was telling a listener earlier that, no, I don't like to get invited to these charity golf tournaments because I really suck, but I'm actually getting better, and I can tell that I'm getting better. And he gave me some great tips. My buddy Kyle Morris up at Cartersville Country Club in Cartersville, Georgia, has helped me a lot, and I'm starting to actually feel like I can play with people who aren't friends now. So at some point, I will be willing to do a charitable thing. My buddy Tom Gray from This Stuff Matters wants to do a charity golf thing with me next year, and I got to get on my A game so that I won't embarrass myself and then go hit golf balls with strangers, which is weird to me, but I'll do it at some point. Now, let me tell you about Hillsdale College because they would love for you to take one of their great classes. And in fact, they've got a new documentary series on the colony. So here's the thing that I love. I love revolutionary American history and the colonial period. And so many of my friends were all like, no, the Civil War is so great. I love the idea of the founding of this country. And Hillsdale now has a 6-part documentary series you can take for free by going to ericforhillsdale.com and learn the history of the colonies. Because, there was about 150 to 200 years of history leading up to the American Revolution. And you need to understand that history in order to understand why the revolution actually happened, particularly as a number of people have cast it now as some sort of major progressive advance. And it wasn't. It was actually a very conservative revolution. And up until very recently, pretty much every historian agreed with that these people wanted what they thought was already theirs, not something new, unlike the French Revolution. You can learn about it at ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up today, ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK.